I'm Alexandra Michaels, 36, and I built a stable, loving home after years of struggling to become a mom. For years, I showed up, hosting holidays, helping my in-laws, making sure my daughter felt part of their family. But when they left her home alone, scrubbing the floor as punishment, while they took their real granddaughter to an amusement park, I made a decision that changed everything. Ever been pushed aside by the very people you bent over backwards for? Drop your story in the comments, you're not the only one. Before I dive in, tell me where you're watching from. And if you've ever had to cut ties to protect your peace, hit like and subscribe for more stories about setting boundaries and choosing yourself. What happened next, you won't see coming. I was an only child, raised by a single mother who did the best she could but didn't have the time or energy for family get-togethers. We moved a lot, and holidays were usually just the two of us, sometimes three if my mom was dating someone new. I grew up thinking family was something that happened in movies, with matching pajamas and group hugs and Sunday dinners that didn't end in someone storming off. So when I met Adam and he introduced me to his big, loud, overly involved family, I was all in from the start. They had traditions. Real ones. A huge Thanksgiving potluck with a rotating seating chart. Birthday breakfasts where everyone wore silly hats, even the adults. A family group chat with way too many gifts and far too many opinions. It overwhelmed me at first, but I told myself this was what people meant when they said they belonged somewhere. So I jumped in with both feet. When Adam and I got married, I remember his mom pulling me aside and saying, "You're one of us now. We take care of our own." I believed her. I wanted to believe her. We tried for 5 years to have a child. I don't talk about those years much. Most people forget how all-consuming quiet disappointment can be. The monthly heartbreak. The invasive tests. The optimism that starts to feel like self-harm. Eventually, we started the adoption process, not because we gave up, but because we realized biology didn't matter to us. We just wanted to be parents. Our daughter, Ava, came to us at 6 weeks old. The first time I held her, I felt a kind of peace I didn't know I'd been missing. She had the softest, roundest cheeks and a little dimple in her chin that Adam insisted she got from him, even though we both knew that wasn't how genetics worked. When we brought her home, Adam's parents decorated the house with pink streamers and balloons. His sister, Heather, drove in from out of town with a mountain of hand-me-downs and squealed over Ava's tiny toes. His dad gave her a clumsy nickname, Squeak, and told us she was already a heartbreaker. "She's our little miracle," his mom said, tearing up as she held her. I should have paid more attention to the wording. Our little miracle. Not Ava. She meant Heather's daughter, born 3 months later after a surprise pregnancy and a dramatic delivery that became the stuff of family legend. From the start, the comparison was subtle but steady. Heather's baby, Sophie, had mom's eyes and dad's stubborn streak. Ava was so quiet, so sweet, so good for you too. Sophie's milestones were celebrated with parties and group photos. Ava's were acknowledged in passing. "Oh, she's walking already? That's fast." But I brushed it off. I didn't want to be the paranoid new mom reading too much into things. I told myself they just had more photos of Sophie because she lived closer. That they missed Ava's preschool graduation because of a scheduling mix-up, not because they didn't care. That it wasn't strange they'd never asked to babysit her overnight, not once, even though they regularly took Sophie for weekends to give Heather a break. Adam didn't notice it the same way I did. Or maybe he didn't want to. He'd grown up in that house, in that noise and closeness, and it was easier for him to assume the best. When I pointed things out, like how his mom never posted pictures of Ava, only Sophie, he'd shrug. Mom's just not great with social media. But it wasn't just social media. It was birthday parties. Ava's 6th birthday was a small backyard barbecue. She asked if Grandma and Grandpa were coming, and when I said they had another commitment, she looked down and said, "That's okay. I think they don't really like cake." Meanwhile, Sophie's parties were full-blown events with themes and custom invitations and multiple cakes. My mother-in-law once hired a face painter and a live petting zoo for Sophie's party. That same year, Ava got a card 2 days late with $5 taped inside. I still made the effort. Every holiday, I helped cook. Every Christmas, I spent hours picking thoughtful gifts, making sure everyone had something personal. When Heather was going through her divorce, I drove an hour each way for 2 weeks straight to help with childcare, so she wouldn't fall behind at work. When my father-in-law's small business hit a rough patch, I quietly transferred money into their account so the electric bill would get paid. I didn't ask for recognition. I didn't even tell Adam most of the time. I did it because I believed them when they said I was family. But Ava noticed. She always noticed. When Sophie showed off her new bracelet and said, "Grandma picked it out just for me because I'm her special girl," Ava turned to me later and asked if she was anyone's special girl. I told her, "You're mine." She nodded, but I saw the way her smile didn't reach her eyes. The worst part was that Ava adored them. She lit up every time they called. She beamed when they showed up, even if it was late or half-hearted. She tried so hard to belong to them. And for a long time, I tried to help her. I thought if I just kept trying, if I hosted more dinners, offered more support, kept our house open and welcoming, they'd come around. There was a Thanksgiving a couple of years ago where Ava made little name cards for everyone and spent the whole morning helping me set the table. She even practiced how she'd greet everyone at the door. But when they arrived, they brushed past her. My father-in-law made a joke about traffic. My mother-in-law handed me a pie and started asking about seating. No one noticed the name cards. Ava stood there for a moment, holding the one she made for Sophie, then quietly put it back in her room. I found it weeks later in her dresser drawer, bent at the corner and a little smudged. She had written Sophie in big pink letters and drawn a heart next to it. I kept trying, even when it started to hurt. Even when it was clear that nothing I did would change how they saw her or didn't see her. I told myself that some love is quieter. That maybe they just didn't know how to connect with her. That maybe one day something would shift. But then came the day I came home from a work trip early. I wasn't supposed to be back until Sunday, but I caught an earlier flight and didn't tell anyone. I wanted to surprise Ava. I imagined her running into my arms, telling me about everything she'd done with Grandma and Grandpa while I was gone. Instead, I found her on her knees in the kitchen, alone, scrubbing the floor with a sponge that was too big for her small hands. Her hair was pulled back in a tight ponytail, and her face was red from crying. "They said it was punishment," she whispered, "because I spilled my juice yesterday." She looked up at me with eyes that were already tired in a way no 8-year-old's eyes should ever be. "They took Sophie to the amusement park," she said. "She didn't spill anything." I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I just sat down on the floor next to her and helped her wring out the sponge. My hands were shaking. That night, while she slept curled up in my bed, I packed a bag. Not for us. For them. And by morning, the phone wouldn't stop ringing. It started small, like most things do. A missed call here, a belated birthday card there. At first, I didn't think much of it. Families are busy. People forget things. But over time, the pattern got harder to ignore. Ava's 7th birthday was on a Sunday that year. We had planned a little picnic at the park, just close friends and family, nothing fancy. She helped me bake her cake the day before, carefully smoothing the pink frosting and spelling out her name with rainbow sprinkles. She wore a sparkly shirt with the number 7 on it and kept asking if Grandma and Grandpa were bringing balloons like they did for Sophie's birthday. They didn't show up. No call. No message. Nothing. I texted them just to make sure everything was okay. Hours later, I got a response from my mother-in-law. "Oh no. Thought it was next weekend. So sorry. Give her a big hug from us." Ava tried to pretend it didn't matter. "It's okay, Mommy. I think maybe they got busy." But that night, when I was putting her to bed, she asked if Sophie's birthday was coming up soon. When I said yes, she asked quietly, "Do you think they'll remember that one?" They did. Of course they did. 2 weeks later, we drove out to Heather's house, 2 hours each way, for Sophie's party. My in-laws had rented a bounce house, ordered a custom unicorn cake, and brought a giant gift with 3 layers of wrapping paper. They took pictures of everything, posted about it the same day with captions like, "Our sweet miracle turns 7. Ava was in the background of one of the photos, holding her paper plate and looking straight at the camera. No smile. I didn't say anything. I just watched. And I started noticing more. When Ava made the honor roll in second grade, she brought home a certificate with gold stars and a handwritten note from her teacher about how much she'd improved in math. I sent a photo to the family group chat. A few people responded with a thumbs-up emoji. My mother-in-law never said a word. 2 months later, Sophie won a local art contest. There was a full post about it. So proud of our little artist. Multiple photos, comments from extended relatives. My phone buzzed for hours with notifications. Ava asked if she could enter an art contest too. I said of course. She spent a week drawing a picture of our backyard tree with crayons and watercolors. When I asked if she wanted to mail it to Grandma, she shook her head. She only puts Sophie's stuff on the fridge, she said. Not mine. I told her maybe Grandma just forgot. That she loved both of them the same. But Ava looked at me with this expression I'll never forget. Like she was trying to believe me, but couldn't. Adam brushed it off. You're reading into things, he said. They're just old-fashioned. They don't know how to show affection the same way we do. But the difference was too consistent. Ava's school performances? They'd come, sometimes, but always late, always leaving early, and always with a comment afterward about traffic or how hard it was to get a good seat. Sophie's ballet recital? They arrived an hour early, brought flowers, and stayed for the cast party afterward. One time, after a parent-teacher conference, Ava made a drawing of our family for her class project. She drew all of us holding hands in front of our house. When she gave it to my in-laws during a weekend visit, my mother-in-law smiled politely and said, "That's very sweet, Ava." Then she folded it and tucked it in her purse. That same afternoon, Sophie gave her a finger painting that looked like a puddle of ketchup and mustard. She gasped like it was a masterpiece and immediately asked Heather if she could hang it on the fridge. Ava was standing right there. She didn't say anything, but her shoulders slumped in that quiet way kids have when they're shrinking themselves. I wanted to say something. I really did. But I didn't want to embarrass her in front of everyone. I told myself I'd talk to them later. I didn't. Then I got the new job. It was a big opportunity, regional sales director for a firm I'd been with for years. The role meant more responsibility, more money, and unfortunately, more travel. Not constantly, but a few trips a month, sometimes over a weekend. I had hesitated before accepting it, mostly because of Ava. But Adam encouraged me to go for it. We'll figure it out, he said. We've got family, remember? So I asked my in-laws if they could help watch Ava when I traveled. Just short trips, 2 or 3 nights max. They said yes. But there was a catch. If Sophie doesn't have anything going on, my mother-in-law added. We already promised Heather we'd help out more this year, and you know how much she's got on her plate. I nodded, trying not to react. So, only if Sophie's schedule is clear? Well, she said, sounding defensive, we just don't want to overextend ourselves. And you know Ava's very independent. She doesn't need as much hands-on attention. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I just nodded and thanked them. Again. That became the pattern. Every time I had a trip, I had to check if Ava's time was convenient for them. They never said no outright, but the message was always clear. She came second. There was a weekend in March when I had a conference out of town. Adam had a work obligation too, and we needed someone to stay with Ava from Friday to Sunday. I asked them 2 weeks in advance. My father-in-law responded, "We'll let you know." Sophie has a birthday party Saturday and a sleepover Friday night, so we're seeing if Heather needs help. They got back to me the night before the trip. Sorry, won't work this time. We scrambled to find a sitter. When I told Adam how frustrated I was, he looked uncomfortable. They're doing their best, he said. It's not a personal thing. But that was the problem. It should have been personal. Ava wasn't asking for much. She didn't even complain when they forgot to bring her souvenir back from their vacation, despite bringing one for Sophie and even Heather. It's okay, she said. Maybe they ran out. One night, after Ava had gone to bed, I found one of her notebooks under the couch. It was filled with drawings. Some of them were of our house, our cat, her school. But one page caught my attention. It was a drawing of 2 girls, one in a purple dress with a crown and lots of sparkles, smiling. The other in plain clothes, standing off to the side. She had labeled them. Sophie, Princess. Me, helper. That's when I knew something had shifted in her. That she wasn't just noticing the difference, she was starting to believe it. The worst part was, I had helped create that belief. By not speaking up. By making excuses. By staying quiet in rooms where she should have been defended. I didn't know it then, but the damage wasn't just being done by them. It was being done by my silence too. And it was building toward something I couldn't undo. Not yet. But soon. The flight had landed early, and for once, everything moved fast. No delays at baggage claim. No long line at the taxi stand. I hadn't planned on coming home until Sunday, but the last day of the conference wrapped up ahead of schedule, and I thought it might be a nice surprise. I missed Ava. 3 days felt like a week when she wasn't near me. I imagined her sitting on the couch with a blanket around her shoulders, maybe eating cereal for dinner, her face lighting up when she saw me walk in. I didn't call ahead. I didn't text. I just took the cab straight from the airport and let myself in through the front door. It was too quiet. The kind of quiet that tells you something's off before your brain can name it. No TV. No humming. No signs of life. My suitcase thudded against the floor as I set it down. I moved slowly through the hallway, calling her name once softly. I found her in the kitchen. She was on her hands and knees, scrubbing the floor with one of our old sponges. The ones I usually tossed after a week. Her shirt was damp, her hair pulled into a tight knot that looked like she'd done it herself. Her face was flushed, her hands red and raw. She didn't hear me come in. I stood there for a few seconds too long, watching the slow, mechanical way she moved the sponge in circles. I said her name again, this time louder. She looked up. And I'll never forget the expression on her face when she saw me. That flicker of surprise. Then shame. And something else. Something I didn't have a word for yet, but would later recognize as grief. Mom? I dropped to my knees beside her. What's going on? I asked. Why are you cleaning the floor? She didn't answer right away. She sat back on her heels and wiped her face with the back of her hand, smearing a line of water across her cheek. I spilled my juice yesterday, she said finally. So they made you scrub the floor? She nodded. Where are they now? She didn't look at me. Just picked at a loose thread on her sleeve. They took Sophie to Fun World. I blinked. You mean today? She nodded again. I tried to stay calm. They left you here? Alone. I was supposed to be grounded, she said. They said I wasn't invited because I'm not really family. That last sentence didn't come out like the others. It came out quietly, like she was afraid of what would happen once it was spoken out loud. She still didn't look at me. I didn't know what to say. I helped her up, rinsed her hands, and wrapped them in a towel. I made her macaroni and cheese, the kind from the box that she always asked for on rough days. She didn't eat much. Just stirred it around and pushed the bowl away after a few bites. I asked a few more questions. She told me they'd picked Sophie up that morning around 10. Her grandma packed her a special lunch and said, maybe next time, if you learn to behave. She'd cried after they left. She didn't know if she should call me because she didn't want to get anyone in trouble. They said it was a consequence, she whispered. And Sophie said, it's not a big deal. You're always getting chances anyway. After dinner, I ran her a bath and sat in the hallway while she soaked. She didn't want me to leave the room. I played music from my phone and talked to her about school, about the class hamster, about nothing. When she was in pajamas, curled up in my bed with the nightlight on, she asked one more question before falling asleep. Do you think they'd like me more if I looked like you and Daddy? I sat there long after her breathing settled into a rhythm. My suitcase was still by the door. I hadn't unpacked. I didn't cry. Not that night. Instead, I went downstairs, poured a glass of water, and sat on the couch in the dark. I went over every moment of the last 8 years in my head. Every time I made excuses. Every time I told Ava to be patient. Every time I told myself it wasn't personal, that they'd grow into their role as grandparents. That I just needed to keep showing up and being kind and holding the door open. And all the while, they had been closing that door behind my back. What they did that day wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a scheduling mistake or a miscommunication. It was deliberate. It was meant to make a point. And they hadn't even tried to hide it. I kept thinking of the look on her face when she said it. I'm not really family. Like it was something she'd accepted. Like it was something she believed. My phone lit up once around 10. A group photo from Heather. Sophie on a roller coaster, cotton candy in one hand, arms thrown in the air. My in-laws smiling in the background, matching hats on their heads. No sign of Ava. No message asking how she was. No apology for leaving her alone. Not even a check-in. I didn't respond. I didn't like the photo. I didn't type out the angry message sitting in my chest. I just watched it fade from the screen. At midnight, I sent Adam a short text. We need to talk in the morning. He was still out of town for work. He didn't reply right away. I didn't sleep much that night. In the early morning hours, I made a list. Not of what I wanted to say, but of what I would no longer tolerate. What I would no longer excuse. What Ava would never be made to believe again. Because it was one thing for them to hurt me. I had learned to live with that. But they hurt my daughter. And that changed everything. I didn't call. I didn't yell. I didn't even try to start a fight. I just texted Adam, we need to talk. He was on a trip in Dallas, scheduled to be back the following night. I didn't expect an immediate reply, but the silence that stretched into midnight still hurt more than I admitted. When he finally responded, it was short. What's going on? Everyone okay? I didn't know how to answer that. No, everyone was not okay. Our daughter had been left home alone and humiliated by his parents, and she thought it was her fault. So I just wrote, ask your mom where she went today. Ask Ava what she was doing when I came home. Then we'll talk. The typing bubble appeared, disappeared, appeared again, then stopped. I turned my phone face down on the nightstand and lay in bed beside Ava, listening to the slow rhythm of her breath. Every so often, her hand would twitch in her sleep, like she was still holding that sponge. At some point, I drifted off too. I woke up around 4 to the glow of my phone. They meant well, Adam had written. She said Ava had been acting up. It was supposed to be a consequence, not a punishment. Sophie already had the tickets and they didn't want to cancel last minute. I stared at the screen, rereading the words like they might change. They meant well. I put the phone down again and just sat there. Still. Completely still. Because if that was his idea of meant well, then maybe we weren't on the same page anymore. Maybe we hadn't been for a while. By the time the sun came up, I had already been awake for hours. I packed Ava's lunch, got her dressed, braided her hair while she sat on the edge of the tub. She didn't say much, but when I kissed her forehead before dropping her off at school, she held on a little longer than usual. When I came back home, I sat in the kitchen and stared at the empty table. The same one where I'd hosted every family holiday. The one where I made space for everyone's food preferences, set the table just how my mother-in-law liked it. The table where I'd cut Sophie's grapes in half and cleaned up after their messes more times than I could count. And now here I was, sitting alone with a knot in my chest and nothing to show for all the years of effort. I thought back to every favor I'd said yes to. Every time Heather needed help with Sophie. Every time I shifted my schedule so my in-laws could have their routine. Every time I went out of my way to make sure our family felt connected, even when it was always me doing the connecting. What had I gotten in return? Ava's forgotten birthdays. Their absence at school events. A fridge that held Sophie's drawings and none of hers. And now this, left alone while the real granddaughter went to an amusement park. It wasn't just about that day. It was about everything that had built up to it. The things I ignored. The little moments I tried to explain away. The ones that, looking back, were loud enough if I just wanted to hear them. I called my best friend, Claire. I hadn't planned to, but she answered on the second ring and said, "Hey, what's wrong?" like she already knew. I told her everything. Slowly. Piece by piece. I didn't cry. I think part of me was too angry to cry. When I finished, there was a long silence. Then she asked quietly, "Are you protecting Ava? Or are you protecting your image of the family you wish you had?" I didn't answer right away, because I knew she was right. I'd been holding onto the version of them I wanted to believe in. The Sunday dinner version. The holiday card version. The version that never really existed. That night, I stopped protecting the fantasy. I stopped making excuses. I went to the hallway closet and pulled out every photo album we kept there, ones filled with family gatherings, vacations, birthdays. I sat on the floor and flipped through them, not to reminisce, but to see it clearly. Ava was in the background more often than not. Sophie front and center, held up by someone. Ava near the edge of the frame, holding a plate or sitting quietly. And me, always smiling. Always hosting. Always trying to hold it all together. I closed the albums and put them in a box. Then I walked into the kitchen and made a list. Not the kind I'd made before, grocery lists, chores, things to do before a party. This list was different. It had one header at the top, what I will no longer do. I will no longer leave Ava in the care of people who make her feel like she's less. I will no longer invite people into our home who do not treat her with love. I will no longer make excuses for adults who know exactly what they're doing. I will no longer pretend it's okay just because it's family. The next morning, I emailed the school to update the emergency contact list. I removed my in-laws. I added Claire. Adam flew home later that day. We sat down after Ava went to bed. He started with, "I think it's all just a big misunderstanding." I stopped him there. "No, it's not." He tried to defend them. Said they'd been overwhelmed. That it was a mistake. That they didn't mean to hurt her. They didn't mean to hurt her? I repeated. She was on her knees, cleaning the kitchen floor. Alone. While they rode roller coasters with Sophie. He looked away. "They thought you'd be home Sunday. So that makes it better?" He didn't answer. "I'm done," I said. Done with what? With pretending they're her grandparents. With pretending they care the same way. With putting her in that position again. "You can't just cut them off," he said, like it was obvious. "I can," I said. And I already did. The silence between us was heavy. Not angry, not explosive. Just final. He didn't fight me on it after that. Maybe because he knew I was right. Or maybe because he realized I wasn't going to budge this time. I told him he could have whatever relationship he wanted with them, but Ava and I were done playing along. He didn't disagree. Later that night, as I folded Ava's pajamas and placed them in her dresser drawer, I found the crumpled art project she'd made the week before. It was a collage of her favorite things, glue stick smudges, magazine clippings, glitter that had migrated far beyond its borders. In the center, she'd written, "Things I love, my mom, my cat, books, cheese toast, being cozy, drawing." They hadn't made the list. And from that moment on, neither did I. I didn't wait for Adam to come around. I didn't ask for his permission. I acted. The morning after our conversation, I emailed the school again and asked them to remove my in-laws from the pickup list entirely. No visits, no exceptions, no explanations needed. I made sure Ava's after-school schedule was locked in with people I trusted, Claire, one of the teachers who lived nearby, and a backup sitter I'd used before. I pulled Ava from their Sunday lunches, canceled our spot at Heather's upcoming family picnic, and when my in-laws texted to confirm that they'd be seeing Ava that weekend, I didn't respond. Then I changed the locks. I didn't announce it, didn't make a scene. I just quietly took back control of our home. It felt necessary, not dramatic, not punitive. Necessary. Adam noticed the new key first. "You changed them." "Yes." He stood in the doorway, frowning, like he wanted to argue. But he didn't. He just nodded once and walked away. Later that night, I blocked their numbers from my phone. I did it while sitting at the kitchen table, the same spot where Ava had once drawn name cards for Thanksgiving, where I'd filled out permission slips and wrapped last-minute gifts and printed out Sophie's birthday invites, because Heather's printer was always broken. I blocked them all, his mother, his father, Heather. I even blocked 2 cousins who had made it their business to weigh in from the sidelines. I told Adam calmly, directly, that his parents were no longer welcome in our home. If he wanted to see them, that was his decision. But it wouldn't involve me. And it would never involve Ava again. That was the line. He didn't argue then either. But the backlash came anyway. And it came fast. By the next day, there were voicemails. Long ones. Short ones. Some teary, some angry, some with the carefully practiced tone of someone trying very hard to sound reasonable while delivering a threat. His mother cried through the first one. "I don't understand what we did that was so awful. We love Ava. She's just different from Sophie. You know that. It doesn't mean we love her less. Please, don't take her away from us. The next one was sharper. I raised Adam to value family. That's what families do, they forgive. They don't throw people away over one misunderstanding. I got 3 texts from Heather that day. The first one said, "Can we just talk?" The second one said, "This isn't fair to Sophie." The third one said, "Honestly, you've always been a little overprotective. Maybe it's time to admit Ava is hard to connect with." That one I read twice. Then I deleted all of them. Cousins started chiming in. People who hadn't said a word to me in months suddenly wanted to help or mediate. One wrote, "We're all shocked. You seemed so happy together." As if I'd filed for divorce instead of drawing a boundary. As if protecting my daughter from people who made her feel disposable was somehow a betrayal of the group. I didn't respond to a single one. But I kept one voicemail. Ava left it from her iPad after school one day. I was in a meeting and had missed her call. She said, "Hi, Mommy. I know you said not to worry about Grandma anymore. And I'm not. I just wanted to say thank you for picking me. That's all. I love you." I played it once. Then again. Then saved it to the cloud. That one I kept. Adam tried to stay neutral at first. Said things like, "They're just processing and maybe it'll all blow over." But after a few weeks, when the silence didn't lift, when I didn't make any effort to smooth it over, he started getting uncomfortable. "They miss her," he said one night, rinsing plates. "I'm sure they do," I said. "Actions have consequences. They're not monsters." "No," I said. "But they're not good for her either." He didn't reply. I could see it bothering him, the quietness, the distance, the fact that his phone had stopped buzzing with family messages too. He wasn't used to being on the outside. He was used to holidays where everyone was talking over each other, where the rules of engagement were murky, but always enforced by whoever cried the loudest. And now there was just stillness. Claire stopped by more often. She brought over dinner one night and found me sitting on the floor of Ava's room, helping her build a cardboard castle. She didn't ask questions. She just sat beside us and joined in. Later, after Ava had gone to bed, she said gently, "You look lighter." "I don't feel lighter." "No," she said, smiling. "But you don't look like you're waiting for someone to hurt you anymore." I didn't know what to say to that. The weeks passed. Adam kept hoping I'd back down. His parents sent a card for Ava's birthday with $20 and a note in block handwriting, "We miss you every day." I didn't give it to her. He found it in the trash. "You didn't even let her decide?" "No, I didn't. That's not fair to her." I looked at him then. Really looked at him. "You think it's fair to let her believe people who treat her like an afterthought are still family? You think it's fair to let her sit in a room with people who forgot her birthday, but flew across the state for Sophie's ballet recital?" He didn't answer. "You weren't here when I found her," I said. "On the floor. Alone. Scrubbing. Crying. You didn't see her face. You didn't hear what she said." He ran a hand through his hair, tired. "I just wish you'd talked to them first. I spent 8 years talking to them. With my time. With my patience. With my silence." That ended the conversation. He never brought it up again. Eventually, things settled. The messages slowed. The phone calls stopped. Ava stopped asking about them. And then one night, a few months later, she sat beside me on the couch while we watched a movie and said, "It's better now." "What is?" "Everything," she said, curling into my side. "It's just better." And it was. Not perfect. Not easy. But better. Quiet in the ways that mattered. Peaceful in a way I hadn't known we needed. I knew I'd be blamed for breaking the family. I knew I'd be called dramatic, ungrateful, difficult. I didn't care. Because I picked my daughter. And that was enough. The first time they showed up uninvited, I didn't open the door. It was a Sunday morning. I was in the kitchen making waffles, Ava still in pajamas, dancing in the living room to music from my phone. She was mid-twirl when I saw the car through the window, white SUV, parked crooked at the curb like they hadn't even tried to park properly. I froze for a second, watching the outline of my mother-in-law stepping out, followed by her husband. Ava didn't notice. She was too busy making up lyrics about syrup. They rang the bell 3 times. Sharp, impatient. I turned off the stove and walked to the front hallway. I didn't open the door. I didn't even peek through the peephole. I just stood there until the knocking stopped. Eventually, the car pulled away. I waited 5 minutes, then went back to the kitchen and flipped the waffles. Later, I found a note in the mailbox. Just 2 lines in her handwriting. We're sorry things got so out of hand. We miss you both. Please let us fix this. No apology. No accountability. Just a vague reach for comfort that wasn't theirs to ask for. Adam was upset when he heard they'd come by. They're trying, he said. No, I said. They're circling. It's not the same. It happened twice more in the weeks that followed. Once while I was at work, Claire was the one who told me, after spotting them parked across from Ava's school. Once on a Saturday morning while Adam was home. That time, he answered the door. They stayed for 20 minutes, left with puffy eyes and a bag of store-bought muffins they'd brought as some kind of peace offering. He told me about it afterward, careful with his words. They say they didn't understand how bad it had gotten, he said. That they never meant to hurt her. I didn't say anything. They're saying they're willing to do anything to rebuild trust. They say that, I replied. But what they want is to be forgiven without doing the work. They want Ava to smile at them again so they don't have to feel guilty anymore. Adam looked down, nodding. You might be right. That was the beginning of a shift between us. Subtle, but real. He stopped asking me to reconsider. Stopped defending their actions out loud. I think something changed for him the day Ava called me my family in front of him, casually, like it was a known fact, like it didn't need explaining. She had been drawing something at the table, and Adam walked by and said, "Is that us?" She shook her head. "No, it's my family. Me and Mommy and Pancake. Our cat." He smiled at first, then paused. "What about me?" She looked up, thoughtful. "You're in the next one. This one's just us." I could see it land. Not harshly, but honestly. Word got out, of course. Families talk. And when they don't, they speculate. Cousins stopped calling. A few unfriended me on social media. Heather made a vague post about the dangers of letting grudges destroy generations. I let them talk. But some reached out quietly. One of Adam's aunts sent me a message. "I just wanted to say I see you. I always noticed how much you did for this family. I'm sorry it took all this for people to realize it." Another cousin wrote, "If I'd known what happened with Ava, I would have said something sooner. That's not okay." And my mother-in-law, once so confidently passive-aggressive, stopped posting altogether. No photos of Sophie. No family brunches. Just silence. I figured she was waiting for the dust to settle, not realizing it already had. Meanwhile, something else was shifting. Ava was changing. She laughed more. She slept through the night. The circles under her eyes faded, and she started singing in the shower again. She started asking for things she used to avoid: playdates, birthday parties, pajama day at school. She asked me if we could go to the art museum together, just the two of us, because it feels like we're always a team. One night, she crawled into bed beside me and said, "It's nice not being nervous all the time." I didn't ask what she meant. I already knew. The silence in our house, the absence of tiptoeing, of explanations, of emotional double standards, was healing her. Healing both of us. I didn't post about it. I didn't make a statement. I just got back to the business of living. Waffles on Sunday. Homework on Tuesday. Bookstore trips on Thursday evenings. I filled the gaps their absence left behind with things that were real, things that nourished her. Adam adjusted slowly. He still called them sometimes, took walks alone where I knew he was working through it. But he never pressured me to change my mind. And he never brought Ava into it. One evening, he came home from visiting them. Quiet. Tired. "They're not doing well," he said. "They keep saying they didn't realize how much you did." I looked up from the sink. "That's because they didn't." "No," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "That's because I didn't either. We didn't have a big moment after that. No long apology. No dramatic breakthrough. But he started doing more. Not just helping, but noticing. One night, he was tucking Ava in while I cleaned up the kitchen. I overheard her say, "Daddy, do you think people can change?" He paused. "Sometimes," he said. "But not always." "Mommy changed," she said. "She got strong." He didn't argue. He didn't correct her. He just said, "Yeah, she really did." And the door between us, between all three of us, started to open again. Not because of a second chance anyone had begged for, but because of a decision I'd made quietly, without permission, without apology. I stopped choosing comfort. I started choosing clarity. And Ava saw it, felt it, became it. My daughter no longer flinched when the doorbell rang. She no longer tried to make herself smaller in group photos. She no longer asked why she wasn't enough. She was beginning to understand something I had taken too long to learn. Sometimes, love doesn't mean inclusion. Sometimes, love means boundaries. And sometimes, choosing yourself is the most radical kind of love you can show a child. Especially when it's the first time anyone's ever chosen them back. The letter came on a Tuesday. It was handwritten, folded neatly in an unmarked envelope, slipped through the mail slot without a return address. I recognized her handwriting immediately, round, careful cursive like a woman trying to make something feel soft. I almost didn't open it. I stood there for a long moment in the kitchen, holding the envelope like it might bite me. Then I opened it. There was no greeting. No long story. No defense. Just one sentence in the middle of the page. I see it now, and I'm sorry. That was it. No signature. No request for forgiveness. No mention of Ava. Just the sentence I'd needed months ago. I didn't cry. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel much of anything at all, except clarity. For once, there were no layers to interpret. No subtext. Just one clear admission that someone had finally, belatedly, seen the truth. I left the letter on the counter. Didn't hide it, didn't bring it up to Adam. Just let it sit there. Later that night, he saw it and didn't say anything either. He just gave me a look, not questioning, not hopeful. Just quiet acknowledgement. He knew what it meant. And what it didn't. A few weeks later, Ava's class put on a school play. She was a tree, not the most glamorous role, but she was proud of it. She made her costume out of cardboard and glitter paint, and practiced her 2 lines over and over with total seriousness. I bought a bouquet of flowers the morning of the performance. Small, bright ones. Ava liked the yellow ones best. When I handed them to her in the car before we walked into the school, she grinned and said, "Do trees get flowers?" I said, "They do when they're my favorite tree." She beamed. Outside the auditorium, Adam hesitated. They asked if they could come. I didn't need to ask who. I looked at him. "What did you say?" I told them it wasn't my decision to make anymore. I nodded once. Then I said, if they come, they sit in the back. No gifts. No photos. No approach. This isn't for them. He didn't argue. They showed up 15 minutes after the play started, slipping into the last row in the corner, almost invisible. My mother-in-law wore a long coat and looked smaller than I remembered. She didn't wave. Didn't try to catch Ava's eye. I sat in the front row. When Ava came out on stage in her glittery cardboard, she scanned the crowd once, spotted me, and waved. Just me. She didn't even glance toward the back. After the play, I met her outside the classroom with the flowers. She was sweaty and proud and full of stories. She didn't ask who else had come. Didn't seem to care. For her, the night was exactly as it should be. Adam lingered a little longer in the lobby. I saw him speak to them briefly, low voices, no hugs. Just a nod. A few words. Then he walked back to us, hands in his pockets. "They're heading out," he said. Didn't expect more. I said nothing. We took Ava for ice cream. She picked the birthday cake flavor, even though it was March. She told us all about how the kid playing the son had forgotten his line, and how she almost laughed on stage, but held it in like a pro. When we got home, she stuck the flowers in a glass and set them on her desk. I found her later that night curled up in bed with the program from the play next to her pillow. I asked gently, "Did you see anyone else there tonight?" She shook her head. "No, just you." I nodded. That's all I saw, too. We didn't talk about it again. I allowed civility. That was all. Not reunion. Not repair. Just a single, cautious gesture for the sake of peace, not for them, not for the sake of mending fences that had rotted years ago, but for Ava. So she could stand on that stage and not carry someone else's disappointment on her shoulders. So she could wave to someone who'd never made her feel small. so she could walk through her childhood knowing exactly who clapped for her and who didn't. They weren't forgiven. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But they were allowed one moment to sit quietly and witness her joy without interfering. And that was enough. I didn't reach out afterward. No follow-up calls. No gestures of thanks. There was nothing else to say. I wasn't rebuilding trust. I was redrawing lines. Carefully. Intentionally. With the understanding that trust is earned with time, not with a single sentence in a single envelope. They could sit in the back row. But the front, the real place, the sacred place, belonged to Ava. And she'd filled it with people who had earned it. It's been a year. Ava's turning 9 next month. She wants a space-themed birthday party, glitter planets, glow-in-the-dark stars, and cupcakes shaped like rockets. She's already made her own guest list, cut from construction paper and taped to the fridge, with little stars drawn next to the names she's especially excited about. Claire is coming, of course. Her art teacher, too, because apparently they now have inside jokes. Even the kid from across the street who used to annoy her is on the list. He's funny now, she said, shrugging, like that settled it. The only people missing are the ones who used to call themselves family. She hasn't asked about them. Not in months. Not since the school play. Not since the quiet visit that came and went like a cloud passing over the sun, there and then gone. I thought she might bring them up again eventually. In a wistful way. In the way kids sometimes test the water, just to see how it feels. But she hasn't. Instead, she talks about who's coming to her party. Who's helping with decorations. What song she wants to play when she brings out the cake. She says things like, "Our house feels good now, and I think Pancake likes it better when it's just us." There's no longing in her voice. No ache. Just calm. She's different now. Not louder. Not more confident in the dramatic way people always hope for. Just steadier. Softer in places that used to be on edge. She goes to bed without hesitation. She wakes up humming. Her drawings are brighter. Her stories sillier. The kind of change you only notice if you've seen the other side. She knows who claps for her now. Adam sees it too. He's changed more quietly than she has, but just as deliberately. It wasn't a straight line. There were still moments early on where I caught him hesitating, caught him looking at his phone like he wanted to type something and didn't. But he stopped. Eventually, the habit faded. He started showing up in ways that mattered. Picking up Ava without being asked. Organizing her art supplies before she even noticed they were a mess. Sitting on the floor to build space puzzles and listening, really listening, when she talked about things like why Saturn is probably the most dramatic planet. He still talks to his parents, I think. On occasion. Brief, infrequent calls that I don't ask about and he doesn't elaborate on. There's no tension around it anymore. Just boundaries. Clear and held. And they've accepted it in their own way. No more letters. No more unexpected visits. Just silence. The kind that settles when everyone stops pretending. It wasn't a blow-up. It wasn't a fight. It was a slow, quiet unraveling. The kind that happens when you stop running after people who never looked back. When you stop handing over your energy to people who treat it like a favor. They faded. And the strange thing is, I didn't miss them. That used to feel like a failure. Like I should have held on harder, tried longer. But now, it feels like freedom. I spent years confusing loyalty with self-betrayal. I thought being a good wife, a good daughter-in-law, meant tolerating things. Biting my tongue. Making excuses. Giving grace to people who never asked for it because they assumed it would always be given. But then Ava got left behind. And that was the end of all that. Because love, the real kind, doesn't leave an 8-year-old on her knees with a mop, crying quietly so no one hears. Love shows up. It holds space. It claps loudly in the front row and knows when to sit in the back. It says, "You're mine and you're safe and you'll never have to prove it." And now that's the kind of love Ava knows. She knows it in Claire, who shows up with glitter and glue and never calls herself Aunt but always feels like one. She knows it in her teacher, who keeps her drawings on the wall longer than anyone else's. She knows it in Adam, who now takes his cues from her, not his parents, and who learned that protecting your child means making people uncomfortable, even if those people share your blood. She knows it in me. The version of me that doesn't bend out of shape to keep peace that costs too much. The version of me that sets the table only for those who want to be there and makes sure my daughter always has a seat in the center. A few nights ago, Ava and I were cleaning up from dinner. She was wiping the counter while I loaded the dishwasher, and out of nowhere, she said, "I like being 9 more than being 8. "You're not 9 yet," I said, laughing. "I know," she said. "But it already feels better." And maybe that's what healing looks like, a slow, subtle shift. A child who feels safer. A woman who finally feels like the house is hers again. A family rebuilt not from obligation, but from choice. We're not perfect. There are still hard days. Still moments I second-guess myself. But they're quieter now. Fewer. Because I know I did the right thing. And Ava knows she was worth the fight. That's the legacy. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of safety. Not just surviving a betrayal, but rewriting what love looks like after it. She's turning 9 soon. There will be balloons and messy frosting and probably glitter in the carpet for weeks. There will be laughter. Loud, confident, echoing laughter. And when she blows out the candles, she'll be surrounded by people who make her feel chosen, not tolerated. And that's enough. Thanks for watching. Have you ever had to walk away from family to protect your child or yourself? How did you know it was time? Drop your story in the comments. I read every one. And if this resonated with you, hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a reminder. Love isn't proven by blood, it's proven by action.